Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really focusing in on one specific story, a personal account shared online that's quite something.
Yeah, it's this incredibly detailed narrative about a wedding experience that just went completely sideways.
Exactly. It's a first-person story. The title is Shocking. They called me the housekeeper at my sigil's wedding, so I walked out without a second thought.
Quite a title. And it really lays out the events, step by step, leading up to this, well, deeply disrespectful incident at her sister-in-law's wedding.
So our mission, if you like, for this deep dive is to unpack this whole experience. We want to identify the core issues, understand why things unfolded the way they did, and really look at the significance of the choices she made.
Right. We'll be digging into those family dynamics, the expectations, those social slights, some subtle, some really not, and ultimately that act of walking away, that act of self-respect.
Okay, so where do we start seeing the signs, the red flags? What were the first hints that maybe this wasn't going to be a smooth experience?
Well, interestingly, it starts with things that might seem small on their own. Like the narrator mentions the wedding invitation. It arrived late, and the way it was written felt, a bit too casual maybe.
Yeah.
Not quite standard for a wedding invite.
Okay, so a bit off from the start. And then there was more with the invitation itself, wasn't there?
Yeah, her name wasn't actually included in the family listings on the invite.
Oh, wow.
And the RSVP card, it didn't have a +1 option for her.
Even though she's married to the groom's brother.
Exactly. Married to the groom's brother, but no +1 slot specifically for her husband with her name. It's odd.
Taken together, those aren't really small things, are they? It starts to paint a picture.
Precisely. It suggests maybe a kind of deliberate marginalization, or at least a lack of consideration that feels pointed. It's like a subtle message that she isn't being fully seen or included.
Right. Setting a tone even before the wedding day.
Yeah, a pattern starting early.
And that feeling, that sense of exclusion, it seems like it ramps up with the mother-in-law, Diane. Her comments about the dress.
Ah, yes, the dress situation.
Yeah.
Diane's comments about the narrator being resourceful and not needing to fuss over finding something to wear.
On the surface, maybe trying to sound helpful, but in context.
Exactly. In context, it feels like foreshadowing, doesn't it? It subtly diminishes the narrator's role as, a proper guest. Like her appearance isn't really a priority.
Kind of assigns her a different status already.
Yeah, it plants that seed of unease, that feeling she's maybe not valued in the same way as others.
Which brings us right to the dress itself. I mean, the actual dress they presented to her.
The plain black, shapeless dress, presented as the specially arranged attire for her.
This is such a stark contrast, especially when she describes what the other women in the family were wearing.
Right. She specifically notes the luxurious pastels, silk, and intricate beadwork. It wasn't just a different style choice. It was visually marking her out, setting her apart. The black dress screams different, maybe even staff in that kind of celebratory setting.
And then Vanessa, the sister-in-law, her reaction when Harper, the narrator, understandably questions it. Oh, come on, Harper, it's just a dress. Why do you always make things about you?
Oof. Yeah, that's classic gaslighting, isn't it?
Feels like it. Minimize the issue, then flip it back onto her.
Exactly. It invalidates her completely valid feelings about being singled out like this, and it reinforces this power dynamic where her perspective just doesn't count.
It really makes the whole dress thing feel so intentional. Not an oversight, but a calculated move, a power play.
I think that's a fair reading, given everything else.
And sadly, it seems to work in a way because it leads directly to those awful housekeeper moments.
Yeah, multiple guests mistaking her for staff, asking her for champagne, directions to the restroom, even asking her to clear tables.
How incredibly humiliating that must have been.
And you have to connect it directly back to that dress, right? It wasn't just about making her feel out of place.
No, it actively made her look out of place.
Exactly. The dress choice physically contributed to how other people saw her, blurring that line between guest and service staff.
It's like the dress was a uniform they put her in. But then, the seating chart, that just takes the cruelty to another level entirely.
Yeah, the seating chart is something else. Finding her name placed in a section literally labeled housekeeping staff and +1s.
Unbelievable. And not seated with her husband, Ethan, or any family.
It's just blatant. It feels like the ultimate deliberate humiliation. No subtlety left at this point.
It's not just exclusion anymore, it's categorization. It's actively demoting her status in front of everyone.
A very public statement about her perceived place or lack thereof in that family structure. It's really the culmination of all those previous slights brought to a head.
And you can see why that was the breaking point, the catalyst for her deciding, okay, I'm done.
Absolutely. That seems to be the moment she decides to leave.
And then Vanessa's comment as she's trying to leave.
Yeah.
Something about last-minute adjustments to the seating. So dismissive.
Right. Just doubling down on the insult, almost triumphantly. But the narrator's response, calm, firm, just stating she's leaving, it's incredibly powerful.
It really is. It's like she just found this clarity in that moment, reclaiming her agency after being systematically diminished.
Yeah, she recognizes the depth of the disrespect and chooses her own well-being over staying in that toxic situation. The contrast between Vanessa's attitude and Harper's quiet resolve is really striking.
And then her husband, Ethan's reaction, realizing what's happening, pleading with her to stay, it feels a bit late.
It does feel late, like maybe he hadn't fully grasped the situation or hadn't stood up for her earlier. His panic seems focused on the disruption.
Which mirrors his family's reaction later, right?
Yeah.
The text from Vanessa, the calls from the mother-in-law, all focused on how Harper ruined the wedding.
Exactly. No acknowledgement of their behavior, just outrage at the consequences. It highlights this real lack of empathy, this focus on appearances above all else.
But Harper doesn't just leave quietly and disappear. She takes it to social media.
Which is a fascinating turn. Sharing the whole story online, pictures of the dress, the seating chart, even Vanessa's aggressive text messages.
And the public reaction is pretty immediate, isn't it?
Overwhelmingly supportive of Harper, from what she describes. Outrage directed at the family. Social media becomes this tool for accountability.
Yeah, it bypasses their attempt to control the narrative. And Vanessa trying to disable comments on her own posts. That speaks volumes.
It suggests they knew their actions wouldn't look good in the light of day. The online support likely validated Harper's feelings enormously.
Then you have the family's panic escalating. Ethan and his mother, Diane, freaking out about the ruined wedding, the social fallout, even mentioning lawyers.
It just reinforces where their priorities are, doesn't it? Reputation management, not relationship repair. No apparent remorse, just damage control.
But Harper's response to Ethan during that call.
Yeah.
Wow, that line. I am home, Ethan, and I think you should figure out where your home really is, because after this, it's definitely not with me.
So powerful. It's more than just leaving a party. It's drawing a fundamental line, recognizing a break that maybe can't be
It
fixed.
signifies this huge internal shift, right? Realizing her emotional safety just can't be tied to people who treat her or allow her to be treated like that.
It's a massive assertion of independence, setting a very clear, very necessary boundary.
And the aftermath sounds like a real journey for her. Blocking family members? That's a big step.
A necessary one for self-preservation, it seems, creating that emotional distance to heal.
And she talks about feeling guilty initially, which seems natural, but then working through it.
Yeah, that guilt is common when breaking from ingrained family patterns. But moving past it shows that growing sense of self-worth kicking in. Vanessa's final nasty message almost acts as, like, final proof she did the right thing.
Because her internal response had changed by then, she wasn't crushed by it anymore.
Exactly. She was focusing on herself, her career, her friends, building new connections, healing.
And eventually, Ethan reaches out again. But she realizes she doesn't need that external validation from him or his family anymore.
That's the real resolution, isn't it? Finding her own sense of peace and worth, independent of their approval or apologies.
So looking back at the whole story, what are the key takeaways for you?
Well, first, the absolute importance of recognizing disrespect, even when it starts small or is disguised. Those initial red flags, they mattered.
Yeah, trusting your gut.
Trusting your gut. And then the power of setting boundaries, even when it's incredibly difficult, especially with family.
It takes immense strength.
It really does. And ultimately, it's about prioritizing your own self-worth over relationships that are fundamentally toxic or damaging.
And maybe also this surprising validation that can come from outside, from wider networks, when you share your truth.
Definitely. That online support was clearly significant for her. It countered the family's narrative.
So this story is just such a stark example, isn't it? How deep these family biases can run, how they can manifest in really ugly ways.
And how empowering it can be to finally say, no more, and choose yourself.
Right. So for everyone listening, maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Consider the invisible hierarchies, the subtle dynamics that might be playing out in your own life.
Whether it's family, friends, work.
Yeah. What are the equivalent black dresses or the housekeeping staff labels, the subtle or not so subtle ways you might be diminished or put in the box? And maybe more importantly, what would it take for you to walk away from them?